Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Wisdom of the Tarot. It's been a while, but I really wanted to get an episode about Samhain or Halloween, as you are more likely to know it unless you're inside of one of the pagan traditions. Samhain is celebrated in a few different ways depending on your exact tradition, but there's a lot of commonalities between all of them. There's usually something similar to the Day of the Dead, where perhaps you commune with your ancestors in some way. There's a few different ways that people do it. Traditionally, you might share a meal with them, or maybe you read tarot cards. There's a few different ways that you can do it, but the idea is that the veil is really thin. It's really the thinnest right around Samhain, between here and the underworld, and that's why it's done. Another thing that happens is it's not just our ancestors that come back through the veil. It's also some monsters from the underworld. So that's why traditionally people would dress up in kind of scary costumes, because they were trying to imitate the monsters. They weren't trying to, they were trying to pass as one of them. They weren't just dressing up for fun. They were really slightly concerned that the monsters might see that they were a vulnerable human being, and so that's where that kind of costume comes from, even though outside of that tradition we've changed a bit what costumes we wear and why we wear them. There's a few other traditional things around Halloween, Samhain, things like apples and pumpkins and gourds, and so you can see I have here this pumpkin. I hope you don't mind if I toot my horn a little bit. I'm gonna pull it a little bit closer. I'm actually quite proud of myself, because I'm more of a Pinterest fail kind of person. So the fact that this looks like a pumpkin is pretty cool. It's made from a book that has seen better days, and I basically just had to cut maybe like 5 or 10 pages at a time. So it took quite a bit of work if you want to do something like that. You would either need to be really patient to cut the whole way through, or you might need to just get if you have access to a jigsaw, that would do it faster. The directions I saw told me to cut maybe 10 pages at a time, so I thought maybe a jigsaw wouldn't work, but I've looked at other people, and they've been able to cut through books with jigsaws or just a regular circular saw if all you need is straight lines. So if you want to do something like this, it was a lot of fun. I just used this is actually hairspray from Didham's. I just went to the Halloween store and got some orange hairspray, but you could use regular spray paint if you wanted. That's mostly it. That and glue, and this is a stick from my backyard. So yeah, sorry about that. I just am not very crafty, so I'm pretty proud of myself. Drop it back. Anyways, let me get to the tarot reading. Like I was saying before, there's a few different themes in Samhain. It's all about the kind of the end of the year, more than the start of the year, but it's the end of a cycle, and so it's about cutting away what you don't need. And it is a bit about transitions and rebirth, but it's focused slightly more on the end of the cycle than the beginning of the cycle. In particular, this year, the time between the 27th and the 31st, if you're watching this in 2019, the 27th is the new moon and 31st is Halloween, Samhain. And so you are inside of Scorpio season, and there's a new moon and Samhain. So all three of those are about cycles, transitions, and kind of death and dying, not in the literal sense, but in the sense of transitioning from the end of one cycle to the beginning of another, which is why I'm trying to get this out now. So if you want to do a reading for yourself with this spread, doing that sometime between the 27th and the 31st would be a great time, because it's got the right energies for that. So I'll show you what I read for myself, and I'll explain both what the spread is and then how I interpreted the cards. So let me get my wand. It's just way too fun to do this, I'm sorry. I'll pick up the cards soon too, so you can see them. So this top spot right here, that is kind of the situation card, telling where you're at right now, what you're looking at right now. Then there's two clarifiers for that card. And the clarifier on the left-hand side is the wisdom of your ancestors. Remember, they're coming through the veil and talking to you. So that's what they have to say about the situation you're in. And then the card on the right is kind of the hidden aspects that are coming to light. So this is kind of the monsters that are coming through the veil. Remember, it's not just your ancestors coming through the veil, there are other hidden things coming through. And so this is giving you more insight into other things that you haven't been able to see, but that because the veil is so thin right now, those are coming through. So those are your two clarifier cards on your situation card. And the last card right here is kind of the action you should take, although it's technically, because this is all about the end of the cycle, this is actually about what you should be cutting out. I usually like to end my readings with what action you should be taking, and I had to stop myself from doing that. This is not the action to take, but what to cut out. So what we have here is we have a 4-card spread with an optional 2 extra clarifiers. I really like spreads between 4 and 6 cards. Different people read different ways, but for me, that's kind of the sweet spot of how many cards I need in order to see a pattern, really. So I like this because you can do it 4 cards or you can do it 6 cards. So I'm going to start reading you the 4-card spread, and then we'll move on to the 6 cards. Okay, so the situation card. Got the 7 of Pentacles. And so you can see the situation is kind of, you are kind of in it for the long term. You've got, you reap what you sow, so you can see that he's kind of staring at all these pentacles that are ripening on the tree and it's about to bear fruit. So it's a pretty good situation to be in as long as you're patient, but you can see this tree is quite mature. So it's been around, he had to plant it, or his ancestors, someone had to plant it and have the foresight and had to be willing to wait for the fruit to ripen. So that's kind of the situation you're in right now. Good things are coming your way. It's not immediate, but you're kind of being rewarded for working so hard previously. Where it gets interesting is the message from your ancestors and from things that have been hidden behind the veil. So what we have right here So we have the Tower. You can see that's very dramatic. So the Tower is basically saying that something is going to be upended in your life. There's something that's kind of a shock, and it's oftentimes kind of psychological, really, more than physical. It's a way of saying that you believed one thing and now your worldview is suddenly going to change for some reason. So that's quite a dramatic card to see. And the Hidden Things Coming to Light card. As you can see, that's the Two of Pentacles. Now what's interesting about this one is that you can see some commonalities between the two cards. Now the Two of Pentacles itself, that's usually about time management or juggling a bunch of responsibilities. And what struck me about these two cards is you can see in the background of both of them, you can see all of this emotional turbulence. So if you're not aware, things like the water, it's kind of a stormy sea, and you can see the boats are kind of flying out every which way. So water in the background of a card tends to be about emotion, and if it's a stormy sea like that, it's very turbulent emotion. And the Tower is the same way. Actually, you can see in the background there's not just the lightning, right? There's here, let's hold it here. Oh, there, that's better. Okay. You can see that lightning, but underneath you can also see the water streaming down from the Tower. So there's a huge amount of water coming through and just raging through this card. So to me, that's just a very clear sign that there's going to be some sort of emotional turbulence that's going to come to light. So basically, you've got a long-term commitment that's about to bear fruit, but you're about to have kind of an emotional upheaval, and it looks like it's going to have something to do with perhaps a new task that you have to take on. Unclear. But if you look at the last card in the spread, I think that makes it quite clear what's going on. So this is Judgment. Try not to get any glare. Okay. So you can see there's a bunch of people sleeping in the foreground, and in the background there's someone kind of trumpeting. They're trying to wake everybody up. So Judgment is kind of a call to action card. So it's basically saying, you know, you've been sleeping, and now you have to receive this call to action to go do this important thing. And so what really is happening here is that you have this long-term plan that you've been working on. It's coming to fruition, and right before it comes to fruition, someone or something calls your attention and says, okay, you need to take care of this, you need to take care of that, something very emotional, and you feel this call to action like you have to respond to it. However, if we remember the position that this card is in, this card is specifically saying this is something you need to cut out of your life. So what the spread seems to be saying, it's kind of warning you that something is coming down the pike that's going to grab your attention, and it's going to be really emotional, and you're going to feel this need to jump in and get involved, that you're a bad person if you don't. But what it's saying is that it's not really something that you need to get involved in. So I like this 4-card spread as is, but you can add these optional additions as a clarifier. And the reason why you might do that is you kind of look at the Judgment card and you're like, okay, I'm not supposed to respond to this like emotional upheaval, you know, easier said than done. So if you want to add 2 clarifier cards, then it's basically the same as before, where you had these 2 cards clarifying this one. So these 2 cards clarifying Judgment. And so you have the 4 of Pentacles, and that's the message from your ancestors. And as you can see, he's holding a bunch of pentacles right around him, and he's standing out in front of a large city. So basically that card is about keeping your resources closer to home. It's kind of saying, you know, here's the city in the background, which is part of a larger community that you're part of, but technically keep these pentacles closer to your own self, closer to your own home and family. And then this card over here is the Knight of Cups. And you can see he's coming through. He's actually another water card. Cups are all water cards, but you can see he's kind of taking his horse through a little bit of sea foam, it looks like, and he's got a cup of water in his hand. So he's, I think, the kind of the more intriguing card. Remember, this is the hidden things coming to light because of the thinness of the veil. So we've got your ancestors who are saying, okay, you don't need to respond to the call to action. Spend your resources closer to home. Over here, I think what this is representing is it's saying that there's going to be someone who's actually going to probably help you. So this person is unexpectedly coming through, and they have, you can see, because they have the water, they kind of have this ability to handle the emotional upheaval that's taking place in these cards. This is not as dramatic. It's still, the seafoam is still a bit of, you know, it's not a still water, but it's easier to handle than the water you see in the background of these ones. So you can see that he's kind of just going through the water, no problem, and he's holding some water in his hand up here, so he's coming through. And it doesn't have to be a man, of course, it could be a woman, but you have, I think, an ally who is helping you to handle the emotional upheaval over here, and who's basically, either they may be taking over the emotional labor of whoever is telling you that you have to, you know, rise to the occasion, heed the call to action. You know, the Knight of Cups may be kind of saying, okay, you know, sorry, it's not, you know, it's not your place to tell them to do that. They've got their own stuff they got to work through. Or they may be able to, you know, help you out with whatever you're going through. If you're feeling guilty about not rising to that call to action, that isn't necessarily something that you need to do. So definitely, if you feel like this is relevant to you, if you feel like this is coming true for you, definitely make sure to watch out for that person over there, because they seem to be on the horizon. Well, I really enjoyed this spread, so I hope you liked it as well, and definitely, if it speaks to you, reading the 4-card or 6-card spread sometime between the 27th and the 31st would be a really great idea, because that's the time when I think the energies are really around, kind of the end of the cycle, releasing of burdens and things like that.